Hello and welcome to the Ice Guys. This is the show that takes you into the world of the National Hockey League. Every game, every day, from a betting perspective. With pro sports handicappers, Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and various guests from the world of hockey and sports betting. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
Welcome to the Ice Guys, Friday, June the 6th. Ian Cameron and Alex B. Smith with you. We've reached that time of the season where we're not on every day anymore, and that tells you we're closing in on the end of the NHL season as we motor along here in the Stanley Cup Final. We've got Game 2 tonight between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, and certainly we will break that game down to every degree, sides, totals, props, you name it, and we'll certainly get to that in a few moments. But first, I'm just going to play the bumper now because we've got show breaking news. We've got NHL breaking news. So we got a lot to talk about before we even get back into recapping Game 1 and looking ahead to Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. So let's roll. We got some breaking news to discuss.
This is breaking news from the Ice Guys.
All right, the first bit of breaking news is show-related. Hopefully everyone, our Patreon members, enjoyed our Game 1 live betcast on Wednesday night. It was a lot of fun. It was a great hockey game. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better start to the Stanley Cup Final as far as an entertaining game. Ebb and flow, back and forth, a lot of pace, a lot of excitement. Hits, physicality, goals, saves. I mean, it was just an up and down pace. I mean, it was just a great first game of the series. Hopefully the rest of the series is that good as well. But we want to make mention to everyone right now that we do have 2 betcasts coming your way next week as the Stanley Cup Final continues. We've got our Game 3 betcast coming up on Monday, June the 9th. And that betcast Monday night, June the 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern for Game 3 will be a free betcast. That will be our monthly designated free betcast for the month of June. The last free betcast of the Ice Guys season. That will be for Monday night for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Panthers and the Oilers. And then we will also be with you on Thursday night, June the 12th for the Game 4 betcast, and that one will be Patreon exclusive. So there you see it on the screen right now. We're going to have 2 live betcasts next week for the Stanley Cup Final. Game 3, free-for-all betcast, 8 p.m. Eastern on Monday, June the 9th for Game 3 of this series as the scene will shift back to Sunrise, Florida for Game 3 on Monday night. Actually, both games in Florida. Thursday night, June the 12th, Game 4, Patreon exclusive. They might be our last 2 betcasts. We're going to have to wait and evaluate, see where this series stands at the end of next week. But certainly, there's a potential these could be the last 2. We're certainly only going to have one the following week if we have one. But again, that's up in the air. But again, this could be the last 2 betcasts of the season, so don't you dare miss out on them. Free-for-all betcast Monday, June the 9th for Game 3, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll be back with you for Game 4 Thursday, June the 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern for Patreon members only. And a reminder to join us for that Patreon exclusive live betcast. Make sure you're on next Thursday for Game 4. Make sure you're on board at patreon.com/iceguys, just $10 per month. Again, our remaining betcasts will be there. We've got Player Suite interviews lined up for the offseason that we'll be recording a series of them once again. And we're going to post daily cards once the NHL season ends for other sports, to give you picks, give you bets that we're making. Even though it's not going to be hockey, we'll give you that. Baseball, CFL, other sports.
Big UFC this weekend. I might have a UFC play up there for this weekend, so.
There you go. And we might even start that this weekend, actually.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. I think Saturday, Sunday, I'll post some of my
big pay-per-view card.
Yeah. Yep, that I'm betting.
Okay.
Alex, UFC. I think we might get that going tomorrow on Saturday for the days where there's no NHL. NHL Stanley Cup Final days, we'll have the NHL card.
Right.
And then the days moving forward where there's no NHL, we'll post some bets that we are making in other sports for those folks that are obviously on Patreon. So look forward to that. It's a way of giving you guys content, and that way, if you want to keep your subscriptions rolling and active and going through the off season and the summer months, you're going to get something out of it. So patreon.com/Ice Guys. Make sure you subscribe there, just $10 per month for that. All right, the other breaking news is all NHL related. We'll start with obviously the biggest breaking news, and it's the most recent piece of breaking news. And once we saw this drag on all week long, and there was not much coming out of the Dallas Stars camp as to what was going on, but we know there were decisions and discussions being made. I'm sure ownership and Jim Nill and the management group about what to do involving Peter DeBoer. The longer it went, the more I thought it's not looking good for Peter DeBoer. And sure enough, of course, the decision was announced this morning that Peter DeBoer fired as head coach of the Dallas Stars. I can't say I'm shocked. I can't say I'm shocked because of how the season ended, how Game 5 ended, and really what became pretty well known. If you read what a lot of the people close to the Dallas Stars were saying, there was a lot of disappointment, anger, frustration, and quite frankly, Dallas Stars players upset with Peter DeBoer's handling of Game 5 and everything that he said after Game 5, and all of it regarding, of course, the controversial pulling of Jake Ottinger in Game 5 of that Edmonton Oilers series. And that, I think, ended up being his downfall. It's a guy that's had great success. It's a guy that's gotten the Dallas Stars to the Western Conference Final 3 straight years, and he's one hell of a coach. There's no denying that. I mean, this guy's been in the playoffs almost every year, going back to when he was with New Jersey, remember, his first NHL head coaching job, and took them to the Stanley Cup Final. But he hasn't been back to the Stanley Cup Final since. It's been West Final as the ceiling for Peter DeBoer in San Jose, Vegas. Actually, 1 year in the Stanley Cup Final.
San Jose last time.
Pittsburgh. Yeah, so two times to the Stanley Cup Final. So he's really had a hell of a run. 2 Stanley Cup Final appearances and a bunch of conference finals, but just unable to get over that hump and get that take that last step. And get the final step in the journey has been the stumbling block for Peter DeBoer. And of course, a lot of conference finals with San Jose, with Vegas, and here with Dallas, but unable to get over that up. Did a great job, great seasons. But when you pull a goalie that the team is committed to long term, which Dallas has, he's one of the best goalies in the sport. I don't care what you think of how he played in the playoffs this year. He is still one of the best goalies in the sport, and I think he still had a pretty good overall playoffs. Did he get outplayed by Skinner? Yeah. He did. But at the same point in time, there's a lot more issues to Dallas's inability to win that series than fucking Jake Ottinger. There's no denying that whatsoever. Putting the puck in the net would have been a nice thing, a good start. And when you're only scoring 2 goals at most in the majority of these games down the stretch of the series, you're going to have a hard time, winning games. Offense dried up at the wrong time. And obviously Edmonton was able to have success on special teams throughout that series, especially as it went on. But at the end of the day, look, it's not just it's not I think it's more so about what happened after Game 5 than just him pulling Jake Ottinger. It was him saying, Peter DeBoer saying after Game 5, and we talked about this already, Jake's lost 6 of the last 7 games to this Edmonton Oilers team. And that's where Peter DeBoer probably made a mistake and probably would want that one back. And even Jim Nill in the press conference earlier kind of said Pete probably has some things that he's even knows now probably would have wanted to do a little bit differently, say things a little bit differently. And him singling out Jake Ottinger for 6 of the last 7 games that they've lost to the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs going back to last year, it's just not the appropriate thing to say, in my opinion. Peter, my goodness, how about saying the Dallas Stars have lost 6 of the last 7 games to the Edmonton Oilers? I mean, it's a team sport after all. And, that's just was not the correct, appropriate thing to say at that moment. And the decision to pull Jake Ottinger is one thing. It's what he said after. It's not speaking directly to Jake Ottinger between Game 5 and Saturday's media availability after the season ended. Not arranging for a call or some kind of one-on-one discussion to air it out, what happened in Game 5. That was a mistake, I think, on Pete DeBoer's part. And then, of course, the players, with a lot of the comments from players in the exit interviews were that they did not like the way their coach handled things. And when you start to have the players criticizing the coach and the way things have been handled, you wonder if they can coexist moving forward. And I think it forced Jim Nill's hand, to make the coaching change that he did. So it's an unfortunate ending to an otherwise really strong tenure in Dallas for Peter DeBoer there. And I'm sure he is not going to have to wait long to get his next head coaching opportunity. He will definitely get one. It's just crazy, Alex, how similar this quick, like it just turned just like that with Peter DeBoer in Dallas, where a few weeks ago we're praising him and the team and the great job they're doing. And then Western Conference final, 5-game series loss later. And here we are, the Dallas Stars looking for a new head coach. Very similar to how it ended in Vegas, similar with the goaltender, how it ended in Vegas with Peter DeBoer and Marc-Andre Fleury, where he kind of threw Marc-Andre Fleury a little bit under the bus for Vegas, falling short. And of course, the agent of Marc-Andre Fleury, Alan Walsh, with the tweet that went viral that year in the playoffs with the sword through Marc-Andre Fleury's back, and the sword had the word DeBoer on it. So, just an unfortunate ending. He'll find another gig. He's still an excellent coach. Yeah, that's true. Jonathan beats up his goalies. And sometimes, too, he's from what I read, there was a great article. Sometimes he's not easily accepting criticism on himself. That's something that sometimes gets Pete a little bit, too, where he's got a lot of yes men on his coaching staff, like guys that are going to agree with him and not as many that may disagree with him at times. And that you need that. You need contrasting opinions sometimes, on a coaching staff. You need someone to tell you, well, hold on now, Pete, I think we should do things this way instead. What do you think? And sometimes if you have too many guys that are going to just toe the line and agree to everything you say, it's not always going to be the right way, but right way to go about it. But it was still a great tenure. But when the players are vocal in their exit interviews that they didn't love the way the coach handled things, it's very difficult for them to move forward together. And as a result, that's where we're at now. Dallas has a lot to, and plus the contract situation's part of it. That's true. DeBoer with 1 year left. I think, he would have been a lame duck coach if they had not extended him this offseason. So they just decided, let's make a clean break right now. The players have voiced their frustration and their feelings. Let's make the coaching change right now. As far as that's concerned. And there's a lot of good candidates out there. I am hoping, and I think Jim Nill's a smart guy. I can't see him going down the recycled dinosaur coaching route. I can't see him bringing in Gerard Gallant. I can't see him bringing in Peter Laviolette. I can't see him bringing in John Tortorella. I can't see him going down that route. I think he is going to bring in a younger, fresher, new voice. I know the Robinsons and me and Alex were talking about this. Neil Graham has done a phenomenal job with the Texas Stars. They're in the conference finals right now. I know they're down 3-1 right now to Abbotsford, so they're in trouble. But still, he's done a great job overall coaching the Texas Stars. And a lot of those players that are with Dallas now, he coached and developed in Texas. And a lot of the players that are in Texas now probably will eventually be with the Dallas Stars, like a Matej Blumel, like a Justin putting on the Ritz, Justin Ritzkovian. He's going to be up there with the Dallas Stars at some point. So why not give Neil Graham that opportunity, maybe, and elevate him from the AHL club to the NHL parent club, the Dallas Stars? This is what Toronto did years ago with Sheldon Keefe. Remember, they just elevated Sheldon Keefe from the Toronto Marlies to the Toronto Maple Leafs after they fired Mike Babcock. So it's definitely something that they could go with, Dallas Stars. I like that move. I think Todd Nelson's a very good candidate. This guy's done an amazing job with the Hershey Bears the last few years, also a current American Hockey League head coach. I think his name is rightfully in the running for the Dallas Stars as well. He's someone I'd certainly consider. Mitch Love is one of the hot up-and-coming assistant coaches that a lot of people have talked about, maybe getting an NHL head coaching opportunity soon. Mitch Love, of course, an assistant in Washington under Spencer Carberry, done a nice job. People think really highly of him as well. Steve Ott. Steve Ott is someone that has garnered some attention. I've seen his name mentioned in this little Dallas Stars coaching search, too. Of course, current NHL assistant coach as well that might be looking for an NHL opportunity. So Steve Ott's in the mix as well. I've even seen Glenn Gulletson, former Dallas Stars head coach, who's on the Edmonton staff right now, potentially in the run. So there's been a lot of names, and I'm okay with pretty much all. Jay Woodcroft, I've seen his name mentioned potentially in the running for the Dallas job, or at least someone that Jim Nill and the management group are going to kick tires on. So I like a lot of those candidates. I think there's a lot of good ones out there. I'm just hoping, and I think they will do this, but I'm hoping they will for sure. Just don't go down that old retired, recycled route. And this is nothing against Tortorella and Laviolette and all those guys. It's time to have a fresh, younger guy, new ideas, fresh face, all of that, I think, now with this Dallas Stars team, especially because Peter DeBoer, believe it or not, even though he's still pretty young, he is a veteran guy now. Like, he's been around long enough that I think he's a veteran guy. So, I definitely think all of those names that I mentioned, Graham, Nelson, Love, Ott, Woodcroft, I really think they're all in the mix, and they're all definitely going to get serious consideration. But Alex, it's pretty amazing that we're at this point, firing a head coach that's taken a team, to the conference final 3 years in a row. But when it ends that way and the players got their pitchforks out, Alex, and they're not happy with the coach for we know why, it's hard to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said it, after, we heard those comments from DeBoer, and then hearing afterward, like, how the players responded, that, if you lose the room, there's no reason to keep a coach around. This wasn't something that was going to smooth out over the summer and then be, just hugs and handshakes once you get back in training camp in September. This was going to linger and just become an even bigger problem. So you nipped it in the bud now. And I think, like I said, it wasn't just the move. I think it was also what was said by DeBoer. Like I said, that the glaring comment that stuck about talking about Ottinger and his record with Edmonton. What you just gave Jim Nill was the opening to ask the question, if you felt he wasn't ready, why did you even play him? So it became a point now of either choice you made, you ended up being wrong, because you pulled him early and it still didn't make the change and the switch that you were expecting during the game. If you hadn't played him before, you would have caused a bigger uproar, and then he would have been fired right on the spot. This wouldn't have been a few days afterward, or we wouldn't have known anything about an exit press conference. He probably just got in his pink slip as soon as that game ended. So the fact that you had that kind of you made that public, that you were on the fence to that big of a point with one of your star players, like you said, you're not getting rid of a guy who just signed an 8-year deal. You're getting rid of the coach who has a year left. And like you said, now they've hit a point where he's got them to the conference final 3 times in a row, which means Dallas is in a really good position. You could run and get a recycle coach because you're right at that point as a team right now. Or you have that luxury of, like you said, getting the guy that you have down in Texas and Graham, getting a younger voice and starting something fresh, starting a new, building upon the culture you have, and then adding a newer, fresher voice to it. I think it's a great spot for Dallas to be in, because either choice you make, you're still looking at a potential, winner within the next year or two. We're not talking about blowing things up and you got a 4-year, 5-year rebuild. You're talking about being right at the doorstep of being a Western Conference champion and potentially a Stanley Cup champion. So as far as what they're looking for, they can kind of sit and take time, because, like I said, there's many options that fit them in the short term. There's quite a few good options that fit them in the long term. So they don't have to rush out and grab somebody. We'll talk about some of the coaching hires that have been made recently, where maybe they seem a little rushed. Maybe they seem like they're still focusing more on the long term, and that's the good spot as far as Dallas goes. Now DeBoer, as far as he goes, like I said, he's a fantastic coach. I feel like a lot of his spots though have been where he's walked onto some good.
I think we lost Alex.
Like we talked about.
There we go. We got him back.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So DeBoer was brought in to, like I said, a San Jose situation where that team, they were a playoff team perennial every year. He got them to that extra step and got them to the Stanley Cup Final. Of course, they ran into a hot Pittsburgh team. Then he couldn't get them back to that point. So maybe if you find a coach like a DeBoer type, essentially, where he gives you that elevation that first year. We talk about, like I said, Laviolette, he's a guy where we always see that first year bump. Maybe Dallas needs a coach like him to give you that first year. A first year bump off of the last 3 years means you win the Stanley Cup, right? Theoretically speaking. So I think the options are much larger for Dallas than they were for, say, teams that were looking for coaches like Pittsburgh or Boston or Chicago. Like I said, even with going the AHL route, that's something that we saw Chicago do twice and it didn't work out. But Dallas is in a better situation because the prospects they have are showing that they can play now. We've seen all these Texas guys come through the last 2-3 years and fill in nicely in gaps and spots for Dallas, and more guys coming through that pipeline. So it's not the worst of situations for Dallas, believe it or not. like I said, it seems kind of crazy. Oh, fire a coach who's gotten you that far in the postseason 3 years in a row. But because of how talented your team is, and you have cap space, moving into this offseason as well. So it's you can patch the holes and fix things up to the point where you can get right back to where you were, if not further, next year for Dallas. I certainly wouldn't be looking at this as a massive kind of a downgrade or a downtrodden situation.
Yeah, no question about that. That might be true for now, Jonathan Davis, that Dallas is keeping their assistants. There's no chance Steven Spott's sticking around. Not a chance to me. He's a Peter DeBoer lapdog. I mean that, it's true. He's been with him, at the hip.
Every coach has one.
Yeah.
Every coach has that one guy that they keep on this, like Coach Q with Mike Kitchen. There's certain guys that they pop around. If that guy's a head coach, there's that another guy there who's an assistant, an associate somewhere tapping around. So yeah, you're more than likely right. You might see him move on with.
Yeah, we're going to hear Steve Spott's resigned in the next few days or something. We're going to hear, because he'll go where Peter DeBoer goes. That's definitely maybe some of the other assistants, like Nasruddin, for instance. Maybe he's going to stick around, but I cannot see Steve Spott, sticking around after this. With what's happened, but we'll see about the other assistants. But big changes in Dallas, at least in the coaching, from a coaching standpoint. We'll see. Like I say, I think there's a lot of good choices they could go with as far as this is concerned. But like I said, we'll have to see how it goes. We also had 2 NHL head coaching hires this week that we have not talked about yet. Of course, with the Boston Bruins, a former Boston Bruin is back in the organization, but this time not as a player, but as their new head coach of the Boston Bruins, and the franchise's first European head coach and the first ever NHL head coach from Germany, Marco Sturm, the new head coach of the Boston Bruins, and Ontario Reign, AHL head coach the last few years, and did solid work there. It's definitely a hire where they went for unknown potential and a higher ceiling potential than, a known commodity and someone that's had a track record of getting the job done at this level before. So that's always the risk. We'll see how it goes. It's definitely kind of an on the cheap hire, because the Bruins kind of operate that way right now financially. I know a lot of the Bruins fans aren't even though Marco Sturm has ties to the organization and the franchise from playing there, they're not thrilled about the choice. They thought they could have had other options, other ways to go about it. But still, it's a guy that's been, known as, obviously when you're an AHL head coach like Marco Sturm has been for the last few years, you've been developing a little bit. And there you go, Jonathan Davis saying, yeah, Marco Sturm. That's my concern, Jonathan. When I mentioned Neil Graham with Texas, the Texas Stars, the job he did in the American Hockey League, and I mentioned Todd Nelson for the Hershey Bears, those are guys that have gotten to conference finals and Calder Cup finals and have won championships at the AHL level. When it comes to Marco Sturm, you're right. He's done, they've had good seasons, regular seasons with Ontario, but, they've had playoff struggles, when it comes to Marco Sturm at the AHL level with the Ontario Reign. But he fits the mold of a guy that development is where Boston's at right now, because they blew up the roster. They're rebuilding. They're trying to integrate a lot more of a younger group, develop the younger players, younger prospects, and you're going to have to hope Marco Sturm's AHL coaching experience helps these players to get better, over the course of time. And that's what remains to be seen. So I'm a little suspect on this hire, simply because of the AHL track record not being as gaudy or strong as some of those other people I mentioned, those other AHL coaches I mentioned. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see how it goes. Not sure who he developed on. Yeah, that's a fair comment. It's not like that LA pipeline to the American Hockey League team right now. The Ontario Reign is bristling with a bunch of NHL ready right now talents at the moment. So that's a fair comment. And Jonathan, you would know, you follow that team closely, and obviously probably their affiliate. So like I said, I've got some doubts. I've got some concerns here. I'm not willing to write it off and say horrible hire, but I'm going to have to see it before I believe it. And then the other one, and this one I like a little bit more. It's Dan Muse hired as head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's funny. Alex was saying something really funny before the show started. I should have written the Wikipedia biography on Dan Muse, because I'm throwing out all these stats and all these things he's done in the past from a coaching standpoint, and none of that shit was even up on his Wikipedia bio page prior to me posting that in our on Twitter and on our group chat. So it's pretty amazing. But this is definitely a guy that's had certainly a good amount of experience with the developing young players, no question. He was an assistant a long time ago, his first NHL job, because he coached in the USHL, the U.S. Hockey Junior Hockey League there. But he was an assistant with Nashville under Peter Laviolette, primarily ran the penalty kill for that team. And, of course, they had some good years there with him and Laviolette in Nashville. He was a big part of developing a lot of the great young U.S. players that you see right now, because he was at the helm of the USA Hockey national team development program. And so clearly development is his thing. He's worked with the likes of Logan Cooley and Will Smith and Ryan Leonard down in the U.S. development program. Those are great young players that are going to have great young careers. And Dan Muse certainly had a bird's eye view and a front row seat to helping those players accelerate their development to be good pros at the NHL level, no doubt. And then, of course, you got another NHL assistant opportunity once again with Peter Laviolette, most recently with the New York Rangers, and now gets this opportunity to be the head coach in the NHL for the first time with the Pittsburgh Penguins, succeeding Mike Sullivan. I'm willing to give this a mild thumbs up right now. I think it's a nice fit because of where Pittsburgh's at. They're in rebuild mode. They're going to start, filling in, I'm sure, a lot of the picks now. Not that they have a ton, but you need to develop players. Development is key. You don't have a ton of big-time draft capital and prospects, surefire big-time prospects in your system right now. So if you're going to work with a bunch of young players that weren't picked, first, second, third, fourth overall, or you haven't been drafting all that well for years and years and years because you've been a contender, you haven't been drafting, that highly, you need a coach that can develop and get the absolute most out of every player in the organization.
Yep.
Dan Muse has showed a track record of that. So that's why I think it's a nice fit. And we're gonna find out how great those development chops are for Dan Muse, because you're right. This is not an organization littered with high-end prospects right now, left and right. There is no question about it. So we are going to find out just how great a developer Dan Muse is from a coaching standpoint, and develop a lot of these players in this Pittsburgh Penguins organization. But certainly has a good track record of it in the past, working with a lot of the players I mentioned. Like when you work with a Will Smith, Ryan Leonard and company, those are really good high-end players. And we'll see now what he can do with this Pittsburgh team. I like it. And certainly there's people that are very well connected in the NHL world saying that he's one heck of a development coach. And it's definitely something that the Pittsburgh Penguins need right now. Now, I know they still have a lot of the old war horses on this team, Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. Seems like we're never going to get rid of those guys. So how, a coach like that fits with them might be a bit of a different story. But I think it's still a coach that for the long-term vision of the Penguins, which is kind of, go the other way, bottom out. Let's start to fill up our prospect system, our pipeline, accumulate draft picks, rebuild for the future. Dan Muse is a good guy to get that process started as far as the new voice and head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I like it. I'm willing to give it a chance. I'd certainly like it more than hire. You cannot bring in some old veteran retread in a situation like this. That would have been just absolutely
not there.
brutal
No.
for the Pittsburgh Penguins to do that. So yeah, we've shit on Kyle Dubas a lot and said a lot of criticism about him, but let's give him some applause when he deserves it. And I think he deserves it for this hire. I do like it with Dan Muse. Alex, your thoughts on the two new head coaches this week in Boston and Pittsburgh?
Let's start with Pittsburgh and the Dan Muse hire. Like I said, I didn't know a single thing about this guy. You talked about him in the chat, and then we did see his Wikipedia page, updated over time. But like you said, this is a good hire, and I always get a little itchy whenever I hear that guy was an assistant. He was working primarily on the penalty kill wherever he was. So, okay, he's a defensive-minded coach, it seems to be. And, when you look at the makeup of Pittsburgh, they certainly need help on the blue end. They certainly need help, the goaltending. Those were all gigantic question marks and issues throughout the last couple of years. Than a coach that they'd hire. But like I said, if I'm 37-year-old Sidney Crosby, 38-year-old Evgeny Malkin, 35-year-old Erik Karlsson, I'm not trying to hear about growth and development. I'm trying to hear about that nature. And so that's where I wonder, how is he going to be able to handle the veterans in the room? And I don't think it should be that hard. It's not like, I don't see Crosby obviously as a team guy. These are all team guys we're talking about, and they should a great amount of character throughout their times in Pittsburgh. But I'm sure the frustration has to boil over for these guys who've been so successful all these years and now have to kind of tread through and be in the middle of the pack, if not worse in the league. So that's going to be the interesting kind of thing to see. I'm really curious to see what this camp. If there was one team I'd like to see their training camp kind of filmed and followed through, Pittsburgh would be on that short list. If there was a Hard Knocks for hockey, I would definitely be interested to see how Pittsburgh gets things rolling for the season. Now Boston with Marco Sturm. Sturm was a great player. Like I said, he has done well within the LA organization. He was the assistant and then moved on and was the head guy in Ontario, but like I said, had issues getting out of the playoffs down there in the AHL. You kind of wonder if this may just be a babysitting gig for him. Like I said, they're going to go through this big rebuild in Boston. You're going to probably start, shipping guys out covered in Providence that's been kind of empty for a while. I don't think he's really going to be graded too heavily, if he does well or if they do poorly, because there's a bigger goal in mind in Boston. So I wouldn't look too deep into what happens with Sturm's tenure. The bigger aspects are going to be what is Neely and Sweeney doing while Sturm's the head coach. If they can find a way to get wins, so be it. But I think we all know Boston's treading downward, more likely not making the playoffs coming up this year. And like I said, we're seeing two guys who are brought in to develop and work with younger players, but in completely different situations.
All right, you and I are on the same page there. Definitely, I think Muse is a hire I like a little bit more, at least at the onset, than Marco Sturm. I definitely think they kind of they went the old boys route. You're right. It's a former Boston Bruin, and he was a very good Boston Bruin as a player. Alex and I are old enough to remember Marco Sturm in the 2000s when he played for the Boston. Hell, we're old enough to remember him playing for the San Jose Sharks. I mean, that's how old we're getting. But yeah, great player. Two-way player, outstanding pro. But like I said, we'll see how it goes as a head coach at the NHL level. Again, Ontario Reign, great seasons in the regular season, but there were some playoff shortcomings there. We'll have to wait and see. And like I said, Boston's in the same boat as Pittsburgh, where you haven't been drafting. Well, Boston's drafted horrifically for the most part the last decade, even when they've had some pretty good draft picks in the as far as their positioning is concerned in the NHL draft. They haven't exactly made the right choices. So, like I said, we'll have to wait and see. But interesting to see how it goes moving forward with both Dan Muse with Pittsburgh and Marco Sturm with the Boston Bruins. It will also be interesting to see how the Stanley Cup Final goes following Game 1, where the Edmonton Oilers, what a win for them. And quite honestly, if you factor in the third period and the overtime, and really the first period, because we were talking about this on the Betcast, it's unfortunate Edmonton was down 2-1 after the first period. They had a really good start. They had the majority of the chances, and it seemed like they got into that penalty trouble. They challenged the Florida goal that tied it, courtesy of Sam Bennett. It was a challenge that Chris Knobloch and the Oilers lost. It put Florida right back on the power play, and they scored again. Florida really took advantage of that opportunity. And obviously, they were able to get the lead 2-1, even though I thought Edmonton played one hell of a first period. They got the first goal very early from Leon Draisaitl in the first minute or so of the opening period of Game 1. I thought Florida did play a really good second period. The second period was Florida's best period, no question. And I think that period, you can argue, was, I think a really good period for them, even though, of course, that period ended with Florida having the 3-2 lead. going into the second period. Both teams exchanged goals in that second period. And then in the third period in overtime, though, it was definitely the ice tilted in favor of the Oilers. They heavily outplayed Florida in the third period and in overtime. And it was really a bunch of chances that Edmonton missed on. And then in overtime, look, I thought Florida early in overtime had some real good chances. And then once we got 5-6 minutes into overtime, Edmonton was really starting to carry the play, had majority of the best looks. Bobrovsky stood tall. He made a couple of just phenomenal saves. One of them, I think, was on a partial breakaway, too. He had a couple of those real high danger chances he had to make a save on in overtime. And then, of course, the ill-timed, just unfortunate, delay a game penalty to Tomáš Nosek there in overtime. And that gave Edmonton the opportunity to win it with the power play, and they did. And you look at the Ekholm goal that tied it, and the Draisaitl goal, his second of the game that won it in overtime. It took precise, precision, offensive execution to win and score those goals from McDavid. McDavid's saucer pass to Ekholm to tie it, and then to Draisaitl to win it in overtime on the power play. You couldn't have made a better saucer pass than that. Perfect, right on the tape. Defense can't react in time, and certainly very hard for even a great defensive team like Florida to do anything about that. Now, Bobrovsky, there were a couple goals that were iffy for him, and we kind of saw that in Game 5, too. That's back-to-back games where there's been iffy goals. Not saying horrible goals, but iffy goals for a caliber goalie like Sergei Bobrovsky that he's given up. Is there fatigue setting in for him? And more importantly, is there fatigue setting in for Florida? Because they foot race battles, races for loose pucks. In the third period and overtime, Florida lost the majority of them. And you have to wonder if that's fatigue setting in a little bit for this team. They've played a lot of hockey. They had to make the long flight in Edmonton for Game 1. They looked a little gassed. I got to call it like I saw it in that Game 1. They looked a little bit, running on fumes, dead legs a little bit. The Florida Panthers, third period and overtime. And don't forget the pace and that Edmonton always plays with, especially in that building. It did look like it kind of wore them down in the third period and in overtime. Now, can Florida respond, regroup, refuel the gas tank, and get that energy level back up again? Because their energy level looked low in the third period and in overtime. Edmonton looked like they were starting to skate in waves and circles around them a little bit. Can Florida tilt it back in their favor going into Game 2? But certainly, it felt, Alex, like Edmonton in overtime, with the way they were playing too, especially in the third and the overtime, really controlling things. If they had lost that game, it would have been a huge kick in the gut. There's no question about that. It felt like a game you got to have this one with how well you've played. They found the way to win it, up 1-0. They were so businesslike and professional after that win, Edmonton. Nobody's smiling, nobody's celebrating. Just, we haven't done anything yet. We just won one game. We know they're going to be better in Game 2, Florida. They said all the right things, the Edmonton Oilers, after that win, saying, we haven't done anything yet. We're getting ready for the next game now. And I like the approach. I like the focus we are seeing right now from this Edmonton Oilers team. And a great game and a big-time Game 1 win in overtime it was for the Oilers. Alex, your thoughts on Edmonton taking Game 1?
Yeah, well, this is definitely a series where I anticipated a split in the first 2 games. Just thought Florida would end up winning Game 1. But this is a team that we can trust off of a loss. We trust them on the road. It's a team where you can trust them to make adjustments. That's what we've seen with Paul Maurice, the best coach in the game right now. And this is certainly, like I said, now to be settled in. Like I said, after playing a lot of hockey, having that time off, making that travel, now you're settled in. You've had a day to be in town, get acclimated to the time, and get some rest. I think we definitely see a sharper start to this game. Now, whether we see the high scoring and breakneck pace of Game 1 the entire time, that I'm not sure of. But I do think we see kind of the same start as far as the first period goes. I would be looking at both teams to score in first period over again. I'm playing that the same way. Pre-game, both teams to score, looking live for the first period over. Did kind of bite me in the butt because the goal came so early in Game 1, couldn't grab that first period over. But I don't think we're going to see a goal within a minute. I think we will have time to grab a 1.5 at a better adjusted price in game. But I like Florida in this spot. because of now that we have the series bets with game 1 and series and the exact order, those are now dead. So I'm just jumping in. I grabbed plus 190 on Florida to win the series outright. 190 is the best price available. I saw at BetMGM, of course, shop around for that. So I'm betting Florida to win this game. I got minus $1.05. Florida to win the series just outright at plus 190, and then go with the first period overlooks. First period over live, both teams to score pregame. I got plus 155 of that.
All right, there you go. All the game 2 looks there for Florida and Edmonton tonight. As you can see, minus 110, even money both sides. 6.5 the total, shaded to the under. Not a surprise this total is 6.5, obviously, after we saw the 4-3 Edmonton win in game 1, which obviously went over the total. We are going to see some lower scoring games. The question in this series, I have no doubt about that, especially with the caliber of goaltenders we're talking about, with Skinner getting better with each game and how well he's played. And we know Bobrovsky, often off a bad game, plays or loss, plays even better the next game. I'm not sure it's going to be tonight. I could see Florida, the games down in Florida, being lower scoring. But I don't love the over tonight. I love the overs, obviously, in game 1. I mentioned that. I thought the long layoff, it was going to be a long pace, or definitely a breakneck pace. I thought there'd be breakdowns. There'd be a little bit, and there was a lot of open ice for both teams in game 1. I think that is the thing that I really take away from game 1 of this Stanley Cup final is all the open ice both teams had. Both coaches, Paul Maurice and probably even Chris Knobloch, even though they won that game, Edmonton, they're not going to want to give their opponent the kind of time and space that they got, on Wednesday night in game 1. So, I'm on the fence with the total. This is definitely, I don't feel like I want to bet over 6.5 pregame. It's one of these deals where if this falls to 5.5 at some point, and it could be maybe a little bit of a slower start, gradual start into this game, certainly then we might open ourselves up to taking a live over at some point. I do like Florida to get a goal in the first period. And like I said, even though the price is in that minus 170 range, I don't mind it. I don't mind laying a price with that. I'd much rather do that than take my chances with Florida first period puck line when Edmonton has got that crowd behind them and has just been so strong at Rogers Place throughout the playoffs. They're now 7-1 in their 8 home playoff games now, the Edmonton Oilers. They've just been great here in this building. But I think Florida does get on the board in the first period of this game. Minus 1, actually the best price out there, shop around. Pinnacle's got it at minus 162. That's a little bit better there for the Florida goal in the first period. Or you could take your chances 1, 2, 3 minutes into the game and get a better price, obviously, on Florida to get a goal in the first period. That it won't happen right away off the shoot. And I think that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm not going to put it all pregame on Florida to score a goal in the first period. Can wait 2, 3, 4 minutes into the opening period. Take your chances that Florida does take some time to get maybe on the board with their first goal, and then get obviously a better price with that.
Do you like them to score first, or do you just like them to score it all in the period?
Just to score a goal.
Do you believe that they need to score first in this game?
Not necessarily, Alex, but I'll say that I think they'll get a goal in the first period. Here's why I worry about taking Florida first goal in the game. Edmonton's not fucking around this year. They're out for blood. They're out for redemption. They're out for their first Stanley Cup, especially Connor and Leon, the core two here. And they looked so businesslike and professional after winning game 1. Like, we're not celebrating shit. We haven't done shit. We're coming to win game 2 as well. And with that home crowd and with how well they've played at home, I'm not sold Florida does get the first goal. I think they score in the first period, but I could see 1-0 Edmonton and then Florida gets on the board. I could see that again, just like in game 1. So to answer your question, no, I don't love Florida to score the first goal tonight in this game. In fact, I think Edmonton's got a real chance to go up 2-0 in this series. I really do. And, nothing I saw in game 1 dissuades me from thinking Edmonton can win this series. And I know a lot of it was that mythology, the history. I went on a history lesson, obviously, in the preview show with the fact that Gretzky did it and Crosby did it, losing in the final and winning the next year against the same team for the first Stanley Cup of their career. The more I watch Edmonton, the more I feel like they've got a real chance to do the same. Connor's got the real chance to do the same. And I'll be honest, I'm worried, and maybe I'm wrong, because maybe it's just stupidity to be real concerned about the Florida Panthers right now because they've shown so much ability to respond and bounce back and mentally tough and resilient and just a hard as fuck physically and mentally hardened hockey team. That's what they are, the Florida Panthers. Maybe it's crazy to be concerned about them, but I saw a team running on fumes in their energy level and their skating in the third period and overtime. Almost like 3 cumulative years of trips to the Stanley Cup Final are starting. You're starting to see the warts of it and the body blows adding up and just the mileage on the body and the legs and the gas tank adding up for Florida. Because I'm telling you what, in the third period and overtime, you go back and you look at every battle for a loose puck. There was a puck just sitting there waiting to be taken. Edmonton was winning those battles 9 times out of 10. And that was foot race situations and just a team with either Edmonton has more speed than Florida, and maybe they do. Either Edmonton has more speed than Florida, or Florida just looked a little bit weary and tired and, running on fumes and the energy a little bit low. But that was pretty darn evident to me that in the third period and overtime of game one, Edmonton was just winning all the puck battles. And that, Alex, that almost never happens to the Florida Panthers.
True.
So is that just, okay, game one, Edmonton just was better in that area? Or is it a tangible sign that they are fatiguing? They are tiring out. They are getting exhausted finally after this epic 3-year run of trips to the Stanley Cup Final. We're going to find out more tonight, but I'll say this right now. If they start losing all these foot races again for loose pucks, Florida, tonight, like they did in game 2, it's time to really get worried if you're the Florida Panthers. But again, I don't want to jump and say that's for sure, but it's in the back of my mind. Because I'll tell you what, they played and looked like a real tired hockey team in the third period and overtime of game one.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. Like you said, that is the biggest key for Florida tonight is that you have to, like I said, win those foot races, play your physical style. You have to maintain that edge. Like I said, it's tough to do that consistently for so long. But you have to do it. It's imperative to do that in this game tonight. Certainly, like you said, you have to get things back on track on your end, and they have to play their brand of hockey to do that.
No doubt. And that's I want to address Mojo. Why would Florida be suddenly tired? They would have been fatigued right off the get-go in these playoffs. Here's my answer to that. It's not just that they're suddenly tired. It's that Edmonton's playing a style of play that really exploits fatigue more than maybe other opponents would. When you watch Edmonton in game one, they're going low to high with their passing in the offensive zone. They got the puck down by the goal crease. They pass it back for a boost bomb or an Ekholm shot, and it's just you're constantly spinning around and head on a swivel defending in the D zone if you're the Florida Panthers. That's fucking tiring. And then that's 3 years to the Stanley Cup Final of doing that shit, and especially when you play a team the way Edmonton plays the game. That's how all of us, you can say, why didn't we see this against Toronto? Why didn't we see this against Carolina earlier in the playoffs? It's a real good statement, Mojo. I appreciate you bringing that up as a comment, because my answer to that is just Edmonton brings the fatigue out of you with their style. That this is where it shows, because they're constantly driving the net. They're constantly pushing pace. They're constantly going low to high in the O zone, blue line to the forwards to the D, trying to open up seams against this team that's just such a great defensive team like Florida. And it tires you, wears you out. Yeah, that's my answer.
Well, and then you look back, Toronto couldn't match Florida's physicality. Carolina couldn't match Florida's, physicality or foot speed for that matter. Edmonton can do both. And that's what makes this such a great series, because Edmonton can outskate any fucking team in the league. And they can keep up with the physicality of Florida. Florida does the physical stuff better. Edmonton skates arguably better than Florida. So those two things kind of neutralize the way. So the two ways in which you wear a team down in a series, they both master the opposite ways of doing it.
As you can tell, I lean Edmonton in game 2 tonight. I don't know if I want to bet it pregame, because there is a part of me that thinks it could be 1-0 Florida, because I think Florida will start, strong. But Edmonton, I think, does too. And it's just, I'm going to take roll the dice that maybe Florida gets up 1-0. And if they do, then I'll definitely jump in on Edmonton at plus money at a better price. I don't know if I want to take them right now at minus 110, but leaning that way. I like Florida to get a goal in the first period. I am going to take the Edmonton team total pregame, though. Over 3 minus 135. I'll go with the 3 instead of the 3.5. In this kind of a series, the 3 is significant because they could land on 3. But it's significant to point out to everybody, Edmonton Oilers have not scored fewer than 3 goals in any home game here in the playoffs. They have not scored fewer than 3. So that's the significance of betting that Edmonton team total over 3 at minus 135, like I have, which is, of course, at BetMGM. So that is a pregame bet for me. Oilers full game team total over 3 minus 135. I've got visions of Florida-Toronto. That's very possible that Florida's going back home down 2-0. And then that's where they regroup, back home in Sunrise with an extra day off. We talk about fatigue, right? I'm concerned, Alex, about Florida's fatigue level. Well, guess who could benefit from the 2 days off that are going to take place and transpire from Friday to Monday for Game 3? Florida could really benefit from that and get, home ice, on their side again, chance to really recalibrate going back home. No, Florida can absolutely win tonight, but I'm leaning more toward Edmonton going up 2-0. And I think they realize that, hey, we've got a chance here to really pounce. I like the absolute focus that we're seeing, especially from, McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, a lot of the Nurse, a lot of the veterans. But like I said, I'm going to take my chances rather than just jump on Edmonton money line right now. Take my chances that they'll be trailing at some point in Game 2 and be able to get plus money. The only Edmonton bet I made pregame, as I mentioned, was that team total over 3. And also I'm on Florida to score in the first period here in that minus 162 range. And I am targeting possibly a live over, but I am definitely not betting it pregame here at 6.5. I will wait to see if we get something better. I do think there's going to be some tighter, lower scoring games in this series. I'm on the fence about whether that will be tonight, but I'm certainly cautious enough of a potential lower scoring game tonight that I don't want to bet over 6.5 pregame. I'll look for something better. As far as props go for this game tonight with Florida and Edmonton, there's definitely some good ones. I want to point out a couple from shots on goal have become almost, I don't want any part of them because of the nonsense of stat corrections and shots being taken away. But Evan Bouchard is ripping the puck right now. And he, I think, is going to, if he's going to play 31, well, obviously overtime affected that, and 7 shots on goal. But a lot of the 7 shots he had in Game 1 were before overtime. So he has been shooting the puck quite a bit. And so I think and Alex Bolduc used that as his best bet on the preview show for Game 1 was Evan Bouchard over 2.5 shots on goal. I think that's probably one of the best shots on goal looks tonight, here in Game 2, quite honestly, as well, because it's been slow to adjust to it. I think he's definitely going to be, like I said, hammering that puck more because I think there's that when you play a team like Florida, they don't give you as much as some other teams. So you shoot the puck at every opportunity, to still get plus money on over 2.5 shots on goal, plus 115 for Evan Bouchard. I think that's definitely something to consider here in this game. We've talked about how Connor McDavid's been shooting the puck a little bit more. He's gone over his shot prop 3 of the last 6 games. As far as the points and goals, assists, and points props, for the most part, I'm going to run back a lot of what I did in Game 1 for Edmonton with Nugent Hopkins' goal and an assist, Corey Perry, who is, of course, expected to remain up there. Although there is some hinting going on that Connor and Leon might get some time on the same line together here in Game 2. We'll see if Chris Knobloch follows through on that. I'm not giving up on Kane and Cat. By the way, I don't always love going to the expected goals route. I'm not as high on that and the analytics aspect of things when handicapping games as some other people are. But I will point out that as far as expected goals are concerned, Kapanen and Perry, for that matter, both of those guys were 3rd and 4th on the Oilers in expected goals in Game 1. So they had their chances. They had their looks. So Kapanen, Perry, Kane was, 0.21 expected goals in Game 1. The guy that led the top 2 Oilers as far as expected goals in Game 1, and Leon Draisaitl was number 1. And so it fits perfectly with the fact he scored 2 goals in that game, including the overtime winner. And Evan Bouchard, believe it or not, was right behind Draisaitl, number 2 on the team as far as expected goals in Game 1. For Florida, obviously number 1 in expected goals in Game 1 was Actually, I shouldn't say obviously. It was not obvious. It was our guy, E2 Kuomintlusterinen at 0.93 expected goals. He led the Florida Panthers in expected goals in game 1. Number 2 was the guy that actually his expected goals actually led to goals. Number 2 for Florida, that being Sam Bennett, obviously, who had an outstanding game number 1. He was 0.58 expected goals. Brad Marchand was number 3. Alexander Barkov, number 4. Carter Verhaeghe, number 5, as far as the Florida Panthers for expected goals in game 1. So maybe it's an E2. I mean, when E2 Kuomintlusterinen doesn't score, Alex, but he's got almost 1 goal expected goal, which is a high number, which means he had chances and he had really grade A positions to score from, and he just didn't. Hard not to look at a cool mint goal prop tonight. It really is not when you see something like that.
Or one of his line mates, because that means if he's getting chances and then maybe he, something's open, he finds one of his other guys on it. So Lundell and Marchand also some guys maybe look keying on.
No doubt. No doubt. Those are all good looks. And again, you sprinkle. This is always my approach when there's a game, 2 teams like this where there's so many candidates that could jump up and score and produce. You keep everything to a smaller amount because you're betting, more players than not. And you hope to hit on a few of them, and you'll be profitable solidly if you can cash in on a few of them. So those are all good candidates to me tonight as far as I'm concerned in the prop market. Great stuff. There you go. That's game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. I'm looking forward to it. It feels like, even though it's 1-0 Edmonton, it's a long series, a long way to go. It's a very important game. Edmonton could take I don't want to say commanding, because nothing is ever commanding against a team like the Florida Panthers. But I'll tell you what, you'd sure feel better going back to Florida up 2-0 if you're the Edmonton Oilers. Certainly. Rather than going back with a split and having to really do some damage back down there in Florida, if you're the Edmonton Oilers. So I talked about how important it was for them to win game 1, and especially with the way they dominated the third period and the overtime. It felt like, gosh, you've got to have this one with how well you've played. But this feels like this is important too for Edmonton, because you give momentum back and home ice back to Florida if the Panthers are able to tie up the series tonight. So it's a great dynamic tonight. How does Florida respond? Is the fatigue concern that I have for Florida real, or can they park that and bounce back strong and get that energy level back to the level to what we've seen from the Florida Panthers a lot the last 3 years? It's another great watch, and hopefully the game is every bit as good, obviously, as game 1 was. Shout out to the chat. Hit the like button. We appreciate it very much. A reminder, we've got our 2 betcasts for the Stanley Cup Final scheduled for next week. Monday, June the 9th, game 3, free betcast, open to everybody. That's Monday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern for game 3 in Florida. Monday, June 9th, 8 p.m. Eastern, free for all betcast. And then our next Patreon exclusive Stanley Cup Final betcast, game 4, next Thursday, June the 12th, also 8 p.m. Eastern. So 2 betcasts next week. We'll be there for both game 3 and 4 next week in betcast style. Free on Monday, Patreon only on Thursday. And for that Thursday betcast, to be part of it, make sure you sign up. $10 per month, patreon.com/Ice Guys. Obviously, you'll get our daily betting card for the rest of the Stanley Cup Final games. But starting tomorrow, we are going to start rolling out sports or card in other sports. Anything that Alex has in UFC, I'll get him to DM it to me. I'll post it on the Patreon page. And all the stuff I've got going tomorrow and Sunday, MLB, CFL, you name it. I will post it on the Patreon page. So very much looking forward to that. We'll get that done Saturday, Sunday. So that's probably what we'll do. Saturday, Sunday, we'll give you a sports other than hockey, a betting card on the Patreon page. Monday, we'll give you the hockey for game 3, obviously. Tuesday, we'll give you a all sports betting card. Wednesday, it'll be Wednesday as well. And then Thursday, back to hockey again. So that's the way we'll go about it. That way, we give you guys some bonus content here during the NHL off season. And don't forget, we're going to have Player Suite interviews over the summer. Our NHL free agency recap show is going to be to Patreon members only in July. When we do, that's the annual tradition. We do that in early July. So that's going to be to our Patreon members. So again, if you want to keep your subscriptions going over the off season, the summer months, we are going to have some stuff for you over the summer months. The baseball chat room is open too on the Patreon page as well. So check it out. $10 per month, patreon.com/Ice Guys.
Also, check out the Ice Guys store, iceguys.myspreadshop.com. You got 4 days where you can save 20% off all items in the store. You get a new t-shirt, new cap, hoodie, whatever you want. Put it all in your cart, hit the redeem button at the checkout, and 20% will be taken out. So that's 4 days left to save 20% off on all items at the store right now. iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
All right, make sure you check out the store. Lots of great gear, lots of great merch. I'm wearing some of it as always. Again, you see it, the draw season shirt. Make sure you check it out. iceguys.myspreadshop.com. Ekholm block shots is a good one. The block shots has been, sparse, me getting involved in block shots props, but certainly Ekholm does make sense. Ekholm, by the way, has really, helped out this Oilers team. I know they played fine enough and better than expected without him, but you also realize how good he is when you do have him back, and Edmonton's finding that out. Obviously, he's been really solid since coming back into the lineup, no doubt. All right, we got Bargain Bin Special of the night and Best Bets coming up in just a moment, right after we hear from our great Ice Guy sponsors.
Support for the Ice Guys podcast is provided by Boston Hemp Incorporated, Tailgater Social, and a big thank you to all that subscribe to the Ice Guys Patreon page. Everyone loves a perfect pair. Bacon and eggs. Thunder and lightning. Mario and Luigi. A hot dog with fries. Ian and Alex B. That's right. Everyone loves a perfect pair. So why not pair up your game nights with Boston Hemp? From exotic flower to concentrates and edible products. You'd be hard-pressed to find a better pairing than Boston Hemp and hockey. Check them out today at bostonhempinc.com. That's bostonhempinc.com. Boston Hemp Incorporated, the official smoke sponsor of the Ice Guys. Void where prohibited by law. Not available outside of the United States. Must be 21 or over to obtain products. Check your local regulations to see if Boston Hemp is available in your area.
Hey, Alex, have you checked out the latest with the great trading platform Kalshi?
Yes, I have. It's been fantastic. This is one of the first and only federally regulated prediction markets in the U.S. And if you're looking for odds for all kinds of different things, not just what we're talking about, the markets in the Stanley Cup, the NBA Finals, you can trade crypto. You can look for trades within the markets involving entertainment, politics. There's all kinds of different markets you can look for, and you can use the odds over at Kalshi.
Time of year to get involved with Kalshi. Certainly if you're a sports fan, Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA playoffs, baseball now underway, with all the different markets to create winning trades. Make sure you're checking out all that Kalshi has to offer.
Absolutely. And if you're trading with Kalshi, use the link kalshi.com/iceguys. You trade $100 or more, they will send you $10 back. So it's fantastic to use. Like I said, any kind of markets beyond sports. We're talking entertainment, politics, crypto, basically anything you want.
So make sure you sign up, kalshi.com/iceguys. Note that it's live on Robinhood and available in all 50 states, making it the first legal place to trade on these kind of events nationwide. Check it out, kalshi.com/iceguys. Shout out to all our great sponsors, Boston Hemp Inc., 20% off using the promo code IceGuys at bostonhempinc.com and kalshi.com/IceGuys. Check out that great trading platform, more than just sports. Check it out over at kalshi.com/IceGuys. All right, bargain bin special of the night. We had a bunch of them, obviously, on the preview show, but now it's just Alex and I, so a much smaller volume of bargain bin special wagers tonight for Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. Alex, bargain bin special. What do you like?
Yeah, you were mentioning about E2 Kuhlman Lusterinen and his expected goals rate, and I said, maybe he can be the guy to get on the score sheet, or maybe one of his line mates could get on the score sheet. I'm looking at Anton Lundell to get on the board with an anytime goal. I grabbed plus 475 is available at BetMGM. There's a plus 420 also available at FanDuel. I think Lundell can get on the score sheet tonight. That third line needs to come through. It's going to be a big, plus for Florida if they win this game. So give me Anton Lundell, anytime goal scorer, plus 475. That's my game 2 bargain special.
All right, Anton Lundell for the Florida Panthers. For Alex B. Smith with his bargain bin special of the night, Lundell to get a goal, plus 500. The best price I'm currently seeing right now with that. So a really good price there. And I've got 2 really good prices for my 2 bargain bin specials, one for each team here tonight. I already mentioned him. We got to go to him. Why not? He was dangerous. He had good looks. He got to the prime scoring areas. Puck just didn't go in. E2 Kuhlman Lusterinen plus 700 for the Florida Panthers. I will go with that for my Florida bargain bin special. My Edmonton bargain bin special, this guy had a bunch of chances as well, including a glorious one in overtime before Draisaitl ended it. And he's just been an ball energy for Edmonton since it being inserted into the lineup during the previous, actually the Vegas series in the second round. Kasperi Kapanen plus 600 for the Edmonton Oilers. So there we go. We got 2 good prices here. Lusterinen plus 700 for Florida and Kapanen plus 600 for Edmonton for my 2 bargain bin specials of the night for game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. All right, best bets. Alex, what do you like for best bet?
I'm going to trust in what I believe is the better team, the better, stronger defensive team, and the better team coming off of a loss. I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers here. They got minus $1.05 on the money line. I think they even things up heading back home to Sunrise. And like I said, now we start to see this series really develop off of what happened in game 1. So Florida Panthers to win game 2. That's my best bet.
All right, Florida Panthers. There we go. We got to get the sound in to win game 2 in that minus 105 to minus 110 range for Alex B. Smith with his best bet. I guess you could call this a partial head-to-head best bet for the show today, but I'm going to go with it's definitely the pregame bet that I've got that I like it probably as much as Florida. I don't want to give out a minus 160 for a best bet, but I do really like that Florida first period goal. But I will go with that team total for Edmonton, over 3 minus 135 for my best bet. Again, Edmonton has not scored fewer than 3 in any home playoff game so far, and I will go with that here in this one. So Edmonton team total over 3 minus 135 for my best bet here for game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. And I want to note about Jonathan Davis and his puck line trend. It finally fell short in game 1. It had been how many games in a row that the winning team in the Stanley Cup playoffs had won by at least 2 goals? I think it was 11, actually. 11 straight games in the Stanley Cup playoffs where the winning team had scored or had won by 2 goals or more in the Stanley Cup playoffs until game 1, because it was only a 1-goal victory in overtime for the winning team, obviously, in game 1, that being the Edmonton Oilers. So I still don't think it's terrible to go that route. Like, if you like Edmonton, what you should be doing is, if you like Edmonton, put something at least on the puck line in this game. If you like Florida, put something at least on the puck line, because we still have seen, 11 of the last 12 is pretty damn strong. And I think 20 of the last 23 overall in the Stanley Cup playoffs, the winning team has covered the puck line and won by at least 2 goals. So I wouldn't abandon ship just yet on it. Even though we finally had a 1-goal game the other night. So, like I said, because I think this is a close series, I wouldn't put it all on the puck line. But if you're going to bet a side, it's not the worst thing in the world, given that trend and how strong it's been, to split it money line and puck line at the very least, regardless of whether you like Florida or Edmonton. Yeah. That's what I would consider.
It's an option. That's why we have options.
That's exactly it. Yep. Shout out to the chat. We appreciate you guys. Hit the like button. It's been a long time since we've had a whole weekend off from doing the show. Maybe once on the playoffs we did.
Last weekend we had off.
Yeah, exactly. Well, 2 weekends in a row now. You're right. But prior to that, it's been a long time. But yeah, we'll be back with you obviously on Monday. It'll be a double header on Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Yep. We'll have the Daily Show. Alex will be recovering from his birthday celebrations on Monday afternoon. So he won't be on for that one, but we'll have a full house. It'll be me. It'll be Perlo. It'll be, I think, Oscar Froberg. And we got a new guest joining us on Monday for the first time as well. And then we'll be back for the Betcast at 8 p.m. Eastern, free for all, for Game 3 on Monday night in the Stanley Cup Final. So make sure you join us on Monday. We'll be back with you. A reminder, the Ice Guys is live every game day through the Stanley Cup Final. If you can't watch the show live, download the Ice Guys podcast in audio form on all major podcast platforms: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Download the Ice Guys podcast when you can't watch the show live. For Alex B. Smith, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday for another edition of the Ice Guys.